Tonight, midterms or bust, Republicans unveiled the GOP's commitment to America, a platform for November.
What the commitment is a plan for a new direction.
And a CBN News exclusive, Congressman Chris Smith on violence against pro-life pregnancy centers.
I haven't heard a peep out of President Biden, and I find that appalling.
Plus, the Army's recruiting crisis.
This could potentially be multi-generational in terms of its impact.
All this and more on Faith Nation. The Republican Party lays its cards on the table. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Abigail Robertson. Tonight, the Grand Old Party is releasing its plan for a 2023 agenda ahead of November's midterm elections. Republicans are counting on their Commitment to America plan as a roadmap to a future majority on the Hill, pitching the platform in Pennsylvania today. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy highlighted the GOP's renewed focus on the economy and education.
The Democrats have no plan for the problem they created. Our job is to work for you, not go after you. Our job is to make America stronger. We believe America is more than a country. America's an idea.
Our CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka was at today's rollout in Pittsburgh, and he brings us more on the party's plan to take back Congress.
House Republicans headed to Pennsylvania to roll out their Commitment to America plan, an agenda setter they hope helps them win back the House in January and win over some voters with these policy proposals.
Who has a plan to change that course? We do.
Hit on a lot of the Republican talking points, including securing the border, lowering inflation, and addressing the crime rate. All things they say Democrats have been weak on.
I think it's going to be really important that Joe Biden, for once, is going to have to be confronted with whether he would sign or veto bills that would solve a lot of the problems he created. You know, Nancy Pelosi shielded him from that for the last year and a half because she won't bring a bill to the House floor that Joe Biden doesn't like. If we bring a bill to lower energy costs, would Joe Biden say he'd sign or veto that bill? He's going to have to be confronted with that real soon.
The plan doesn't directly address the issue of abortion, but does commit to protecting the lives of unborn children.
The people that I represent, family is everything to us, right? So to me, it's important that the House Republicans have a pro-family message, right? A lot of it determines at the state level whether they implement, you know, this, that, or the other. But I'll tell you, in Texas, the pro-family message is a winning message.
The Supreme Court has made a decision to pass it down to the public to have the input by the states. And here we say we protect the unborn plus the mother is what we look to.
The parallels between today and 1994's Contract with America from former House Speaker Newt Gingrich are clear. Republicans used the strategy almost 3 decades ago to gain seats, and Republicans today hope history repeats itself. Outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Matt Galka, CBN News.
Today, Democrats blasted back, revealing a party platform of their own. We'll have more on that later in the show. But first, the threat to pro-life centers around the country. Jane's Revenge. It's one of many threatening messages spray-painted on crisis pregnancy centers across the nation. Even worse, more than 60 centers have been firebombed or vandalized. Workers at these nonprofit clinics and the women who need their services are at risk, especially in blue states like Massachusetts. Heather Sells brings us more.
Not long after the historic abortion ruling, extremists attacked this crisis pregnancy center in Worcester. They spray-painted Jane's Revenge on the sidewalk and smashed the windows.
And the police were here waiting for us.
Director Kelly Wilcox says the intent was clear.
They're trying to put us out of business by attacking us.
An hour away in Revere, vandals spray-painted this center, leaving messages that put both staff and patients on notice.
We were concerned because that's a direct threat.
Crisis pregnancy centers in blue states like Massachusetts are facing uncharted waters. Backlash in the aftermath of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade and the possibility of more restrictions on their work. Instead of any kind of protection plan, municipalities like Worcester are considering ordinances to penalize these centers for what opponents call misleading communication. And the state's Attorney General, Maura Healey, has doubled down with a consumer advisory. It maintains that most centers are not licensed medical facilities, that unlicensed staff perform ultrasounds, and that they often provide inaccurate and misleading information about abortion.
Deception is at the heart of the typical CPC's business model.
Adding fuel to the fire is the state's own Senator Elizabeth Warren.
CPCs often lure women seeking legitimate reproductive care, including abortions, into their facilities.
In August, Warren introduced the Anti-Abortion Disinformation Act, designed to target CPCs nationwide.
Having to make a choice without all the information is not pro-woman.
Clinic directors like Teresa Larkin and Kelly Wilcox dispute the charges of deception and misinformation. They say their mission is to educate women in crisis about all of their options with peer-reviewed scientific facts.
They have to have good information to make a good decision.
Both clinics, like many others, explain online and on their consent forms that they do not provide or refer for abortions. For women wanting a choice, they offer a medical pregnancy test, an ultrasound to determine how far along they are, and consultations to discuss their options. Many of these women face economic hurdles and what is known as reproductive coercion.
We have people just, their parents won't pay for college if they have a baby, or, hey, I'm going to break up with you if you have this baby.
3 in 10 Clearway clients do choose abortion. Some, like Courtney, have chosen both abortion and life.
Even when I reached back out to them and told them that I did not keep my pregnancy, they still embraced me and still stayed in touch with me.
Courtney decided to keep her next child, a daughter, and says she hopes Clearway will stay in Worcester despite city and state pressure.
There's girls who really do need places like this, and it's the thing that empowers them, and it's the last stop that gives them that grain of hope that they long for.
NIFLA, a national organization for crisis pregnancy centers, says they provide incredible benefits for communities. $280 million worth of free support services each year. And of its 1,600 members, 1,400 are medical facilities.
Pregnancy centers that provide medical services absolutely have medical providers.
NIFLA counsel Ann O'Connor says only licensed staff provide medical services like ultrasounds, and she counters other allegations made by Massachusetts officials.
We're not deceptively advertising, so I'm not aware of any prosecution against any pregnancy center in any of those locales.
Mark Rienzi, the president of Beckett, a religious freedom law firm in Washington, D.C., says if there is evidence, officials can prosecute with consumer laws already on the books.
Ultimately, look, if the Attorney General has evidence that someone's actually been defrauded, that someone's been harmed, that somebody practiced medicine without a license, that somebody engaged in actual false advertising, Massachusetts already bans all those things. They're already illegal. And I'm sure there are plenty of prosecutors who would be eager to prosecute pregnancy centers who engaged in them.
And Rienzi warns that both blue and red states must be mindful of First Amendment rights for everyone.
The First Amendment is designed to stop governments from picking just one side of a debate, declaring it to be true, and punishing the other side.
For now, both Larkin and Wilcox are ramping up security, and they're making their case by reaching out to local and state officials.
We cannot just serve women and families. We've got to get out in the community and educate our lawmakers about who we are and how we bring such a benefit.
Reporting in Massachusetts, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, on Capitol Hill this week, Republican lawmakers introduced legislation to help protect pregnancy care centers against violent extremist attacks. Congressman Chris Smith is one of the sponsors of the bill. He spoke with CBN's Brody about why it's an important measure.
Representative Smith, thank you for your time. As we heard Heather report, more than 60 crisis pregnancy centers have been firebombed or vandalized since the Supreme Court's Roe decision. You presented a bill to combat that called the Protect Pregnancy Care Centers Act. What will it do?
So what our bill does, clearly, and it calls upon or requires that the inspector generals of Homeland Security and Justice actually tell us what Biden is doing. Is he, deploying sufficient law enforcement resources to investigate, and then prosecutors who will prosecute these terrorists, or not? It also provides, as a provision that ensures that we find whether or not they're getting enough help to mitigate the threat. As a matter of fact, they've had over just a 5-year period, over 800,000 saves, women who have given birth. That's just over 5 years. So it's a necessary pro-life ministry and initiative. So groups, including Jane's Revenge, have made terroristic threats, written and defaced the facades of many of these. They've broken their windows, firebombed them, and haven't heard a peep out of President Biden.
Well, the president has been vocal about ending political violence, but as you said, he hasn't said anything about the violence against these pregnancy centers, and nobody has been arrested, neither prosecuted for any of these crimes. Why is that?
I believe the president neglects to mention the pro-life pregnancy care centers that are being firebombed and terrorized as we speak, at least 70 and probably more. And I would say equally the churches that have been firebombed, Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, that have been attacked and desecrated. Where is the president on that too? He is AWOL, absent without leave, as they say in the military. And there's been a lack, when you come to prosecutorial discretion and the ability of prosecutors to pick cases, as well as police to, what are you going to investigate? Where are you going to put your assets and resources? They're not here. They're not defending those who are defending the women and children from the violence of abortion. And I find that appalling. That's why we've introduced the bill, because we want the inspectors generals to look into this and give us an assessment, hopefully an honest one, about how robust, if at all, those efforts to protect these innocent people are.
Well, you've spent your life defending the right to life, so why is this issue so important to you?
In college, 50 years ago, 1972, I did a speech on abortion in a public speaking class, got 3 speeches back that were as hostile as you could possibly imagine. And it just stirred my conscience. New Jersey was considering abortion on demand. New York had already legalized it up to 24 weeks. It was prior to Roe versus Wade. And I got thinking about it, praying about it. And the scripture that just grabbed me was when Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. So every child and every mother who is being subjected to an abortion, because we know the pressure is very often overwhelming on that woman during that crisis. But the babies who are killed, we need to see the face of Jesus. I do believe the Lord, loves them so much, and really is calling us, challenging us, not to sit on the sidelines, and to assist those women who are going through that crisis and their precious babies.
Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey, thank you so much for joining us on Faith Nation. Abby, back to you.
Thanks, Brody. Well, coming up, Democrats blast back, taking the political pulse in Pittsburgh after today's dueling speeches. Tonight, Democrats wasting no time in responding to the Republican platform heading into the midterm elections. Today in Pennsylvania, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer calling the GOP platform long on slogans and short on details.
True details of Republicans' agenda are too frightening for most American voters. Vote no. Details matter, however. Over the past 2 years, our Democratic House majority has been focusing on the details and putting people over politics and delivering results.
Here with us now is our very own CBN News Chief Political Analyst, David Brody. David, always a pleasure to have you on Faith Nation. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Abby.
Well, David, the Republican and Democratic Party leaders took to Pennsylvania to deliver dueling pitches today. Both seem to focus on workers and the economy. But who do you think has the upper hand here going into the midterm elections?
Well, Abby, if you put the economy and Biden together, it's not good math for the Democrats. So I think the answer clearly is Republicans. And look, if you do a deeper dive into Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is below the national average. And the national average, this just in, not very good when it comes to the economy in terms of how each state is doing. But Pennsylvania is actually below that. And so Democrats clearly have some uphill sledding to do. And not to mention, we're getting the reports today that the Dow Jones, in essence, closing down at its lowest point of the year. So look, this is no doubt a real problem for Democrats. They've got the harder situation right now.
Mm-hmm. And David, this Pennsylvania push comes with President Biden in Washington. He's appeared in a series of Democratic Party fundraisers, and this is ahead of former President Trump's rally tonight in North Carolina. But are Biden and Trump an albatross or an asset to their parties right now?
That's a good question. Albatross. I like that word. Well, look, I mean, I guess it's the truth is in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, there are certain people that are going to say, oh, he's helping us out. Though I will say this, I don't think anybody, let's be honest, just between you and me, there are no cameras rolling here, Abby. Well, just between you and me, who's going around saying Biden's this big help? Look, he's not, right? Because the economy's not going well. So, I mean, that's the truth of the matter. I think Democrats are hoping that Donald Trump will be this big weight on the GOP shoulders. Here's the problem. The last time I checked, and someone will have to mail me a ballot. Heck, they mail everybody else a ballot. Someone mailed me a ballot. I don't see Donald Trump on the ballot. And so the Democrats are going to try to convince voters that Donald Trump is on the ballot, but he's not. And I think that'll be the difference. And that's why Democrats still have some problems here.
Mm-hmm. Now, David, we have about a minute left, but today President Biden hit on the abortion issue pretty hard, saying Democrats would work to codify the Roe v. Wade decision legalizing abortion, and said that women would help Democrats win in November because of the abortion issue. What do you think? Is abortion a galvanizing issue for Democrats this year?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, the Democrats sure hope it will be. And polling has suggested that there is going to be some headway they can make here as it relates to the midterm elections. So I think there is some truth and some validity to it. Having said that, if you're going to go around saying, look, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade into law, look, I think that's the last thing Americans want. And on the flip side of this, Abby, when you have Lindsey Graham talking about the 15-week fetal pain bill, or excuse me, to make abortion, in essence, illegal nationwide after 15 weeks, I don't think voters want that either. So if Democrats are going to say we're going to go ahead and codify all of this into law, which we know they want to do, but if they're going to lead with that, I'm not quite sure that's going to turn right independent. You bet.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Well, coming up, Uncle Sam wants you or not. When we come back, a recruiting crisis in the military. Uncle Sam wants you if you qualify for military service. A critical recruiting crisis is underway that puts America's national security at risk. Unfortunately, a record number of young people are ineligible to serve, and others have no desire to do so. Caitlin Burke explains why America needs to return to being a society of service.
The U.S. Army is on track to have its worst recruiting year since Vietnam, a shortfall that could have implications for decades.
This could potentially be multi-generational in terms of its impact. Young recruits today become our young and senior leaders of tomorrow. And so if you can't develop them today, you have a gap in leadership tomorrow.
Right now, the Army has only reached about 52% of its recruiting goal for the current fiscal year, which ends later this month. Other military branches are closer to their targets, although attracting and retaining talent is a challenge across the board.
We reduced our pilot shortage by 250 airmen, yet we still have over 1,600 pilot vacancies.
Military leaders say many factors contribute to the shortage: the pandemic, the labor market, even competition from the private sector. The biggest problem, however, is a shrinking recruitment pool. Of the age-eligible population, less than a quarter are even qualified to serve.
That has to do with criminality, can't necessarily pass the initial intake tests, and or mental health conditions, things like that, and obesity and physicality.
I believe as a culture, we need to get back to a society of service. I think we need to look at national service. You don't have to be in uniform to serve. You could be in inner city tutoring, national parks, rural medicine. But how do we get our youngest folks kind of, frankly, off the couch, off the video games and out serving each other and learning those life skills of teamwork, discipline, followership, leadership?
Florida Representative Mike Waltz believes stronger leadership is needed from the Pentagon, pointing to issues such as vaccine mandates.
The National Guard is on the verge of potentially kicking out, discharging 20 to 25,000 National Guardsmen and women who have concerns about the vaccine. And look, I get the notion of a soldier's given an order, they have to follow the order. But also as leaders, we have to constantly reevaluate our orders and do they still make sense?
Colonel Matthew Amidon, Director of Veterans and Military Families at the George W. Bush Institute, says all sectors working together are needed to solve this recruitment crisis.
This is not just a Department of Defense challenge. This is a Veterans Affairs challenge. This is a community, a philanthropy, a nonprofit, and a corporate sector challenge as well. Everybody needs a seat at the table, because really at the core, what you are doing is by raising your right hand, maintaining and advancing our democracies.
Congressman Waltz pointed out that the Biden administration's student debt relief program could be another blow to the military's recruiting efforts, one of the major rewards for serving being a free education through the GI Bill. Waltz says that's not nearly as incentivizing if the government is putting people through college. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Finally tonight, after a year of anticipation, a potentially Earth-saving maneuver is finally happening. NASA's double asteroid redirection test, called DART, will happen Monday night. That's when NASA will smash a small spacecraft into an asteroid's moon. But no need to fear, an asteroid is not heading towards Earth. NASA said it's the world's first test for defending the planet in case an asteroid does head near Earth in the future. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. I hope you have a great weekend.